Booked Live. I'm here today with Amy Bloom. I'm so excited. Welcome. Yay, clap.
Yay,
Thank
clap.
you. Amy is, her latest book is I'll Be Right Here, and I interviewed Amy before for her last book, In Love, which is like one of my favorite books. Has anyone read that book? Here in the audience. It's so good. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'll read you her bio and then we'll get into this new book. Amy Bloom is the author of 4 previous novels, White Houses, Lucky Us, Away, and Love Invents Us, and 3 collections of short stories, Where the God of Love Hangs Out, Come to Me, finalist for the National Book Award, and A Blind Man Can See How Much I Love You, finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award. Her first book of nonfiction, Normal Transsexual CEOs, Cross-Dressing Cops, and Hermaphrodites with Attitude, is a staple of university sociology and biology courses. Her most recent book is the widely acclaimed New York Times bestselling memoir, In Love. She has written for magazines such as The New Yorker, The New York Times Magazine, Vogue, Elle, The Atlantic, Slate, and Salon, and her work has been translated into 17 languages.
All true.
All true. Phew. They got it right. All right, I'll be right here. Can you tell everybody what this book is about?
Sure. I can.
Would you also please do that now?
I was thinking about it on my way over here. My kids say that I only have 4 topics. And depending on which kid you ask, they would say family, love, sex, and death. I feel like that's plenty. I feel like I have covered the waterfront. And that's what the book is about. It begins in occupied Paris. I should say, well, because we're all friends, I should say I was beginning a historical novel, which was my mandate from my publisher. And so there's a great deal about occupied Paris during the war. And our central protagonist, a woman named Ghazala, who is French-born but of Algerian parentage, becomes basically the dog's body and tweenie of Colette, the writer. Colette had always been a favorite writer of mine and also seemed to be one of those terrible, great monsters that you read about. My favorite story of Colette is she is entertaining a lot of very fancy people at her family's home in Burgundy, and they are late, and she is hungry. So she eats the tops out of the deviled eggs and the custard out of the eclairs and leaves them there for the late arriving guests. I thought, well, how do you not want to get to know this woman better? Also, she was sort of a cheerful, bourgeois, polite, Parisian anti-Semite for most of her life. And then she fell madly in love with her third husband, who was Jewish. And so the story of her evolution and her struggles with the Germans and hiding Maurice for 18 months really captured me. And so I put Ghazala into that world. And when the war is over, Ghazala comes to America, and she finds 2 girls who live across the street over the bakery, which is where she has come to work. And they are Alma and Anne Cohn. And the 3 of them become best friends, and then her brother returns from Algeria, and now they are 4 best friends, and later on, one more friend joins the group. And they are known in their family as the Greats, because they are, of course, the grandmother, they are the great aunt, they are the great uncle, and it covers about 50 years in a family's life. I think the other thing I tend to write about, because it's interesting to me, are found and made families. I am deeply attached to the family I was born into and the family that I gave birth to, but I am also really interested in who comes in from the wings. That cousin to whom everybody is very attached for 10 years, who then moves far away, or the person who has been far away and suddenly makes a connection with your sister. And now this person is at every family holiday, and half the time you're still thinking, where did you come from? So all of those things came together for me, and it is really portraits of everybody in the family and the weaving in and the weaving out. I think the other thing is that I did not come from a family. My parents and grandparents were, I think old school would be the polite way to describe it, silent on the subject of their personal histories. And so, I would say at one point to my mother's mother, to my grandmother, Grandma, I see, I know my uncles here in America, but I see in this photograph that when you left Russia, you had 8 siblings, and when you came to America, you had 4. To which I would get a response that was something like, uh-huh. I found that interesting. I found the closed doors compelling. And so part of this novel is really a way to write about the fact that our parents and our grandparents are so mysterious to us, that we do not know who they were before we came on the stage. And I wanted to write about what people are willing to share, what people keep closed forever, and how that affects the family's life. That's what I think.
That was a great cab ride, pitch development.
Thank you.
Check plus. Oh my goodness. What did you end up finding out about your own family?
Well, not as much as I would have liked. My other favorite story about my mother's mother, for whom English was, I think, a 4th language, and just tired of it by then. She was like, I have learned languages. And so, I said to her, so what was it like in the old country? And she goes, not so nice. I said, well, what about here? Nice. So that was my maternal side of the family. That was that. And my grandfather, my father's father, had the distinction of being deported from Russia, not something that happened that often, for being, depending on which relative you asked, a terrific hellraiser and union organizer, which we were all quite pleased with. Also, it seemed to me a not very talented burglar. So, combining his 2 loves, he came to America, and I went to work in a factory. So, the stories from the past I like, and I liked I found a letter from my dad for my 21st birthday, which really delighted me. This was not a man who was really put on earth to have children. I mean, he did his best. It wasn't a great idea. It was all right. It worked out. Good DNA. As he himself would say, excellent DNA. And I would be like, yes, but. And he was like, no. But he was an enormously curious person. There is nobody he met that he was not interested in. And I feel like that was really part of the DNA. And in his letter to me on his 21st birthday, he said, it's okay to hate things and institutions. He said, especially institutions and especially policies that hurt other people. He said, don't be sorry if you hate them. He said, just don't forget to do something about it. So that is also probably folded into the novel as well.
So interesting. To back up for a minute about In Love, your memoir, you wrote so beautifully, and obviously we'll stick mostly on this, but just for context, if people haven't read it before, so beautifully about your late husband's Alzheimer's and his decision to take his life with dignity, and your helping with that and writing about that, and his telling you had to write a book about it, and how you were not, when people would ask you, did you want to? And you were like, no, he didn't ask me to, he told me to. And so you did. You shared all of this about your life when really you're mostly writing in fiction. How did that experience of writing about it change things, and how did it help you? How did it, if at all, change your approach to writing fiction afterwards?
If I'm lucky, I'll never write a memoir again. That was not my goal. And it really was true. People would say in interviews, in a very lovely manner, oh, did your husband ask you to write about this? And I would be like, no, he didn't ask me. He said, you're a writer. You got to write about this. He said, if we had a leaky faucet and you were a plumber, I'd ask you to fix it. You have to write about this. And so I did. And I certainly shared more of myself than I am inclined to in fiction. And when I first started writing fiction, I thought that I could hide. I thought that I could create these interesting characters who were not me, as it turns out, not me, and that I could keep myself to myself, which is my preference. This public speaking is all fairly hard won. It is not actually my nature. And I think returning to fiction was, first of all, a certain kind of relief. It's like, oh, good. I don't have to make any embarrassing announcements about my own personality. But it's also coming to terms at this point in my writing with the fact that whoever you are, whatever you are writing, yourself will leak out. It will come out in the little round spaces of the A's and the E's. It will just, you cannot hide who you are. I remember, when Philip Roth died, I was on a couple of panels because I was a great admirer of many aspects of his work. And, somebody said to me, well, do you really think that people's personalities come out? And I said, yes. Nobody ever read Philip Roth and said to themselves, boy, if I were down with the flu, this is the guy I'd really want bringing me a bowl of soup. No, said no one ever, I don't think it's a bad thing. And it doesn't even speak to whether or not the man might have been completely great as a caregiver. But you cannot keep who you are from the reader. And I think I don't try as hard now. It's like, when you have a novelist who says to you, oh, it's all made up, they are lying. When you have a memoirist who said this is exactly what happens, they are also lying. Because we're writers, so we drag ourselves with us. Just like everybody else does, in every conversation, you are you. One makes an effort, as my mother would have said. When I was in the green room, I was brushing back my hair, and I could feel my mother's hand, right? Just off your face, darling, off your face. And I feel like, they come with us. We come with us, they come with us, in whatever form the writing is.
I can't believe you said this doesn't come naturally to you. I feel like I'm just sitting here watching like a stand-up show, and I could just watch you all day.
Happy to hear it.
Okay, well, on a more serious note, in the book, there is so much about, obviously, anti-Semitism, about the Holocaust, more than just anti-Semitism, but the extinction of Jewish people, and how one girl tried to take some matters into her own hands by, one by one, sort of stealthily saying goodbye to some German men, which we could talk about.
I'd be happy to, because those are based on real people.
Really?
Yeah. So in the novel, and Ghazala is trying to find her way as a human being, and part of what I wanted to write about, is that I grew up with part of my family is French, and I grew up with a lot of stories about the French resistance, which if you read the first-person accounts from the early 1950s, it sounds like 97% of the country was engaged in resistance. More like 2. So. But there were these 2 girls who were tremendous heroes in World War II. They were Dutch girls. They were teenagers, and they were in the resistance. And their form of resistance was, this is a little dark, I should warn, this is not cheerful. And so they walk past the German soldiers, and they're like, hi. And the German soldiers, naturally, foreign guys in another country, go, hi. They go, want to take a stroll? And they go, sure, let's take a stroll. And they walk through sort of, I guess, the Dutch equivalent of the Bois de Boulogne, and into the groves of trees, and then they slit the Germans' throats and roll up their skirts, and off they go. And they were tremendous heroes, and they did this more than once. And I really wanted to write about that. I thought, what is it to be a 16-year-old girl in an occupied country and decide that this is the thing you can do? Not delivering maps on your bicycle, people did that, not handing over a code, not just trying to protect your parents, but that you could actually be a fighter. And I was very taken with that. So I used that story, but I always try to make it really clear, this is not a story I made up. This is based on history of World War II.
It was not your own experience.
No, it was not my own experience.
Well, we have to ask after your last.
There is
Just have to ask.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot in there that's my own experience, although there is, I think, a very entertaining section of a early, like late 1970s feminist consciousness-raising group that is based on my own experience, and it's, from my point of view, hilarious.
How do you feel in this climate of anti-Semitism here in the U.S. and everywhere with this book coming out? How do you feel about it?
I would say about myself as a writer, I don't write to recommend. And I say that partially because I've often gotten letters from people saying, how could you let this happen? Or why did you choose to describe this? Or, you know, the wicked are not punished and the good are not rewarded. And I'm like, entirely correct. That would be consistent with my life experience, right? The bad are not necessarily punished, the good are not necessarily rewarded. For me, I don't think of myself as a political writer at all. But I think there's enough of a shift in the world that now I feel to write about women as people, to write about Jews as people, to write about people of color as actual human beings, turns out to be, for me, unexpectedly a political stance. It had not occurred to me that the world would be shifting in such a way that any of those viewpoints would have more impact than just being the basis of how I tend to operate and see the world. And I feel more than I have, I think, in the past, that it is important. It's important to tell the truth, which one wants to do in writing, which is not necessarily about the facts, but about things that are true. And also, my view of the world is that this is a big, extraordinary bouquet that we are handed in this lifetime. And I do not see it as my job to pluck out some of the flowers and trample them underneath.
Okay, beautiful. When you were writing about the close relationships, especially the brother and sister relationship, talk to me a little bit about that and how you structured that, the varying layers of their relationship, all of it.
So Ghazala has a brother, Samir, who's her big brother. And he is, in fact, not her biological brother. He is brought into the family as a baby when his mother dies in childbirth. And Ghazala's mother is his mother's best friend. And so they grow up together. And I think, especially for people who have had what we would now call deeply traumatic childhoods, you know, like a war and an invasion and the death of your parents, there's a very particular bond that can be formed, certainly between parents and children, and also between siblings. And they are just, there's a Greek myth, Baucis and Philomene, whose greatest wish, right, when the fish jumps out of the ocean and grants them their magic wish, is that they would be together forever. And so they become bushes. And their roots are entwined and their branches are entwined. And that's how I think of this brother and sister, that they are the center of each other's lives. And it allows them to be a very strong base for others, but they are always at the center for each other.
I love that. And I love the Coen sisters and the whole family.
I love the Coen sisters.
And I mean, they're like a comedy act in the middle of the novel. How did that come about?
Well, again, you'd have to speak to a lot of my dead relatives. But but there is a moment. I have a big sister. This is a woman who only stopped introducing me to people as Baby Amy in the last 10 years. And I said to her, "You have to stop." I said, you make us sound like Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. It's like, it's upsetting to people. And she says, well, that's how I see you. So in this whole section in the early 1950s, I really wanted to write about New York post-World War II because it was a period of such, on one hand, such constriction socially, but also people who had been released and were actually going to be able to move forward. And there is a moment where I stole a line from my sister's mother-in-law. I don't know what that would mean she is to me. I'm sure there's a word in Yiddish, but I don't know what it is. But, and so she would say very sternly during a conversation, if you said something that she thought was untoward, I mean, it could have been anything. It could have been, Aunt so-and-so's new hairdo or, da-da-da, whatever it is that, Uncle Archie was doing. And she would say very repressively, I could make a remark. And that just stayed with me. And so I had to build an entire scene in the Cohn family apartment, where they moved down from the Bronx, around, I could make a remark. And I felt like it was sort of like a combination of like the worst of the KGB and sort of Borscht Belt comedy,
Are you working on another project now?
My publisher must have sent you. I have two things that I am working on. And one of them that will happen more immediately is actually next year I have my first mystery coming out.
Ooh.
I love mysteries. I always used to read them for like just kind of mind candy. And the Mysterious Press was nice enough to buy it, and they said, oh, we like this character very much. How about 2 more?
Ooh.
And I said, sure. I think what they liked is when I was an undergraduate, one of my gigs, this was back in the day, you didn't have to be 21, I was a bartender for like the alumni events, and because I was the most junior member of the staff, my job was to, they would say, wake up the alumni who are still here. I don't think that's what they meant. I think what they meant is make sure nobody is dead. And so, and I'd wake up the gentleman, I'd say, oh, Mr. So-and-so, time to go home. And either he would get up or he wouldn't. And I thought, what a great setting for a murder. So in the murder mystery, I have a disgraced English professor who takes up being a private eye and is called into her alma mater for the death by bludgeoning with a bronze bust of Nathaniel Hawthorne. So that's the next one.
Amazing. Amy, thank you so much.
This has been a
Congratulations.
pleasure.